Welcome to another HoloNet news episode from the Infernal Brotherhood of the Scruffy Looking Nerf Herders. My name is Adam, and today is January 13th, 2026, and we're going to be talking about Star Wars resetting their sequel trilogy, perhaps. We're going to be talking about Ahsoka Season 2, and it's supposed to be out this year. We'll get into it. And then, of course, we're going to cover every upcoming Star Wars video game that we're probably only going to see like a quarter of them. And then, of course, we're going to take a look at the Star Wars news feed. So let's get into the HoloNet news is what it's called now. All right, we're going to start with Star Wars hits reset, quietly retcons sequels, and cancels The Mandalorian. We've seen a string of major moves within the Star Wars franchise lately, with the latest retconning the sequel trilogy. With the release of a new comic, the studio has quietly rewritten an important character moment for Han Solo, effectively changing the way audiences interpret the Star Wars The Force Awakens film. Multiple changes hit Star Wars franchise. It's been over 6 years since Star Wars hit the big screen. Fortunately, 2026 marks the franchise's grand return to theaters, with The Mandalorian and Grogu due for release on May 22nd, 2026. This follows several years of Lucasfilm going all in on the Star Wars universe on Disney+, also known as the Mandoverse. This started with Season 1 of The Mandalorian and encompasses additional projects such as Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett. However, as per recent reports, this universe is coming to an end. According to industry insider Daniel Reichtman, the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu and Season 2 of Ahsoka may mark the final chapters of the Mandoverse. Lucasfilm will reportedly shift hands from President Kathleen Kennedy to two new co-presidents, Dave Filoni and Lin-Wen Brennan, later this year. Apparently wants to use the performance of Ahsoka's second season as a barometer for future Mandoverse projects, with no new installments greenlit at this time. This follows previous reports that a previously announced Season 4 of The Mandalorian will not happen, despite the completion of scripts before the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. Star Wars retcons unpopular sequel trilogy. Fresh off pressing pause on the Mandoverse, Star Wars has retconned the sequel trilogy. One of the most nostalgic moments in Star Wars The Force Awakens sees Han Solo and Chewbacca bursting onto their old ship, the Millennium Falcon, after Rey and Finn steal it from Unkar Plutt and fly it out of Jakku. It's later revealed that the ship was stolen, with Han lamenting that they should have double-checked the western reaches. But according to the Direct, the recent released comic book miniseries Han Solo Hunt for the Falcon, which is set before The Force Awakens, Han Solo is shown tracking the Millennium Falcon to the desert planet. Han even travels to Jakku, where he confronts Unkar Plutt, but realizes that it's too dangerous to push the situation, ultimately deciding to leave the Falcon behind. Of course, that totally rewrites a massive moment in The Force Awakens. The film sees Rey reveal that Unkar Plutt stole the Millennium Falcon from the Irving boys, who stole it from Duquesne, while Han assumed that Duquesne had his ship. If Han already knows Unkar Plutt has his ship, then their entire exchange makes absolutely no sense. It also seems out of character for Han to know exactly where his beloved Falcon is located, but to give up recovering the ship after just one confrontation. At the same time, the retcon also corrects the previous complaint that it was unrealistic for Han to have never figured out where the Falcon ended up. Rumors of a deeper sequel trilogy retcon. Past reports have suggested that Lucasfilm could conduct a wider retcon of sequel trilogy at some point. The odds of that happening seem slim for how much some fans hated certain elements of the sequels, such as the decision to separate Han, Luke, and Leia, Rey's innate abilities of the Force, and Ben Solo Kylo Ren's abrupt death after his redemption. Disney's unlikely to sweep a trilogy that both cost and earned hundreds of millions of dollars under the rug. More likely is the idea of Disney meeting fan complaints in other ways. For example, Lucasfilm is set to give Rey a solo outing. That is, if the project ever nails its script, with some fans having theorized will include some kind of return for Ben Solo after Disney axed the latter's standalone film last year. in an effort to placate fans who were disappointed by Luke Skywalker's journey in the sequel trilogy, particularly Star Wars The Last Jedi, the studios also incorporated a younger version of the character at the height of his Jedi powers in both The Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, all thanks to the power of CGI de-aging. Taken together, the winding down of the Mandoverse and smaller continuity tweaks suggesting a franchise entering a period of consolidation rather than correction. Instead of aggressively revisiting past films, Lucasfilm appears focused on refining how different eras connect, using side projects to clarify motivations and smooth narrative edges. These softer attempts at swaying disappointed fans seem more like a full-blown retcon, but at the end of the day, everything can happen in a franchise that somehow brought Palpatine back from the dead. I always thought that was pretty ridiculous that Star Wars fans, purported Star Wars fans, always thought it was weird that Palpatine came back. But if they actually were Star Wars fans, they would have known that Palpatine comes back in the EU because they were fans and they would have looked into it or read it themselves. And yet, and I get if you're a new fan because you just never paid attention until recent or you just weren't alive at the time, well then, yeah, that would seem a little bit odd. But at this point, it still shouldn't seem strange because once it happened in The Rise of Skywalker, you would then be able to go back and look at those materials that already had him coming back in different ways. So at this point, it shouldn't be this sort of throwaway line that, you know, how could they possibly do this type thing when it's always been there? All right, that is one part. I really do think the Mandoverse is coming to a close. And whether or not they ever see the realization of that final encounter between Thrawn and the New Republic forces, whether they shoehorn that into Ahsoka Season 2, who knows? But they've been consistent with their retconning of moments in all of their materials, from novels to comics to video games, to their films and TV series. Disney has done a horrible job at maintaining any semblance of consistency. And you can make an argument that Star Wars of old in the EU, now referred to as Legends, did the same thing, but actually there were decades upon decades of consistent storytelling that the old EU had because their story group actually cared. Whereas we have people like Pablo Hidalgo fuckhead who doesn't know fuck all about Star Wars apparently because they're part of the story group that's supposed to be maintaining consistency between different mediums and they clearly are not, as evidenced by the newest comic, which is just one tiny example of a whole host, mountainful of examples of how Lucasfilm, Disney, and Star Wars story groups don't know what they're fucking doing. Now look, it doesn't mean they're incapable of course correcting and getting back on track. Of course they are. But will they? No, because they don't care. It's not important to them to have consistency. It's not important to them at all. All they're doing is putting out new project after new project, not because they love the IP, but because they want to milk the IP for as much as they possibly can. And that is genuinely the feeling I get when I see these new projects being released that completely shit on older versions because they are horrible clones of these older versions. I mean, Dave Filoni straight up said he's going to be doing the Thrawn trilogy, but with Rey rather than with Luke Skywalker. Which begs the question, why? No one likes Rey more than Luke Skywalker. No one. There's no reason why you couldn't just have Luke Skywalker be the main character as he was in the books and the comics that came from the books. None at all, except that you don't want to have Luke Skywalker in there. You want to shoehorn this new Mary Sue character into this franchise that, quite frankly, all of the fans of the franchise didn't like, and all the new fans who did like her, or arguably still do like her, don't care about Star Wars at all. They just like a female-empowered character, which, again, I like as well. Princess Leia was a perfect example of that. Who actually made mistakes, ended up enslaved by Jabba the Hutt, and then ended up murdering his ass for it. So there's great story arcs you can tell without having a female character be perfect in everything they do and still be believable and entertaining and beloved. And yet, this modern iteration of Star Wars doesn't seem to even understand that basic principle, that human beings, regardless of gender, need to have a character arc. This is just storytelling 101. You would think that the House of Mouse would understand that, but obviously not. And I don't have any hopes with the idea of changing of the guard, as it were, for Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Disney is going to change anything, especially when they're shoehorning in Ahsoka, another character that can never do any wrong and is always good in everything. And like, I just don't get it. It doesn't speak to me. And I'm an actual Star Wars fan, which is weird, right? You would think Star Wars fans would love Star Wars. All right. So what do you think? Do you think that Star Wars is doing their own little minute resets throughout the course of their materials in different medium in order to clarify where they're going to be going? Or do you think they're just not paying attention to small details and throwing out random stuff that they think is going to be fun for fans or for storytelling that end up contradicting previous story beats that have existed? Let me know in the comments. Love to hear what you have to say. All right. So let's get to Ahsoka Season 2, because I had reported, because still there is no official date that this is going to be dropping. So Ahsoka Season 2 gets a major release update amid fears for the show's future. Star Wars fans have been concerned about the fate of Ahsoka Season 2, but a new Disney Plus update has provided audiences with a bit more clarity. Fans are beyond ready to catch up with Ahsoka Tano. Really? The most beloved Star Wars character to never have a live-action appearance until this decade. She has been a fan favorite since her 2008 debut. No, she was hated in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and it took seasons, plural, of The Clone Wars for people to love her. So it took a long time for us to sort of turn course and appreciate Ahsoka, but at this point we're beating a dead horse, and people are actually taking notice. But that popularity skyrocketed when Lucasfilm brought one of the biggest fan castings to life by casting Rosario Dawson as the Jedi Knight. I thought she wasn't a Jedi Knight. After a guest stint in The Mandalorian, she headed her own series on the Disney Plus streaming service in 2023, and history was made. You fear Ahsoka may... Ahsoka... Hey, Chris. Ahsoka enjoyed a successful run on Disney Plus in 2023. A successful run? I mean, if successful means it aired, then yeah, it aired. But there were genuine problems with the script and character choices in that series that not just me, but everyone noticed. But yeah, let's go ahead and just pretend that it was a hugely successful run, which led to an inevitable second season renewal. After a lengthy wait, the show has completed production with an apparent 2026 release window set for its return to screens. That is, until a recent update has worried fans about its future. Thankfully, it sounds like the course has been corrected. Disney Plus confirms Ahsoka Season 2 is still coming in 2026. Rest easy, Ahsoka fans. Disney Plus has confirmed that Ahsoka Season 2 is still on course for 2026 release. The streaming service unveiled a new coming soon in 2026 section on the platform, and thankfully, the Star Wars show's sophomore season is among the listed titles. And therefore, it sounds like we can expect to see Rosario Dawson's Jedi Knight wielding her lightsabers on screen at some point this year. Does anyone else find it interesting that there's no actual date, no month, no anything? Like, if this is in the can and ready to go, why isn't it out there? Do you think that it's waiting on the success of The Mandalorian and Grogu to announce it? Because that would make sense to me. If they're worried that this is going to land or not, they want to have some sort of connection or tissue, connective tissue in Mandalorian and Grogu to see if people want this second season. And look, there are diehard fans of Ahsoka, and they will always want it. But for those of us who saw genuine problems with the actual storytelling components and character choices, and those choices are being echoed online infinitely more as the actual series has been seen by more and more people, well, then that might actually worry that this was supposed to be a tentpole series and is now sort of relegated to the, I wouldn't go so far as to say to the acolyte level of the dustbin, but it's certainly walking toward it. Speculation surrounding the show's fate began to swirl at the end of last year when a new press release for Disney's designed to confirm which Star Wars, Marvel, and indeed Disney projects we could expect from the 2026 release slate omitted Ahsoka Season 2 from its lineup, despite previous confirmation that the show's sophomore season would release this year. Perhaps this new update is an attempt to make up for that confusion. You think? So the version of Ahsoka in the extra Season 9 of the Clone Wars was awesome. I totally agree with you. You loved her disgruntled soldier. You think they'll end it differently based on what aspects of The Mandalorian and Grogu is successful or not? Yeah, that might be why. I mean, we have no idea. We're just speculating, but that's kind of what we Star Wars fans do, right? So speculation surrounding the show's fate began. Okay, I already read that. Right now, Ahsoka Season 2 is the only returned live-action Star Wars show on the Disney Plus docket. The Lucasfilm franchise is currently in the process of staging its return to the silver screen with this year's The Mandalorian and Grogu and next year's Star Wars Starfighter movie. So the focus on the TV arm of the saga has been pulled back for now. This comes after a number of underperformers, including Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte, the latter of which did well but simply couldn't produce the viewing figures to make up for its massive budget. Did well? It had continually diminished viewing per episode. That means it started in a decent space and then continually got worse because people dropped off because it was fucking horrid. But we can pretend. There are rumors that a long-term plan for a second season of the mega hit Obi-Wan Kenobi, while The Mandalorian's potential fourth season might depend on the success of the upcoming movie, but Ahsoka performed well for the streamer, so a second season was a wise choice for that one. And honestly, the reduced Star Wars output on Disney Plus and the long wait for Season 2 could ensure the Jedi Knight's return to the platform is as buzzy as it deserves to be. Look, it's been years, plural. There's no buzz about Ahsoka right now. Everyone has just moved on, just like with Skeleton Crew, just like with Acolyte, just like with Mandalorian, unfortunately, and just like Book of Boba Fett. You consistently put out poor quality shows and people stop paying attention. And then you say that there could be next year or now this year a new season, but we're not committed to telling you when. Tells us, viewers, that you're not confident about the product that you've created and you're worried that it's not going to land. That tells us we shouldn't pay attention, hence no buzz. While the future of Star Wars TV on Disney Plus is unclear beyond Ahsoka Season 2 and the various animated offshoots, including the heavily anticipated Maul Shadow Lord, we're just excited to see Ahsoka Tano back in our screens in 2026. So, Ahsoka Season 2 arrives on Disney Plus in 2026. When? Who knows? So, do you think that they're actually going to release this? Are they worried about the product that's been produced, and that's why they don't give us a release date? Or is everything hinging on the success of Mandalorian and Grogu in the theaters? Let me know what you think in the comments below. You do want another Kenobi season, despite the pointless subplot. You love Ewan McGregor in the role, and you'll watch anything they put out for him in that role. Yeah, I really enjoy him as well as as an actor in general, but as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I mean, the reality is I'm not signing up for Disney Plus, so I probably won't see anything that they don't put in theaters, at least until I get tired of banning them from my home. But who knows? Who knows? I would like to see, as long as there's logic to it. I just want a story. That's all I want. A logical story with understandable character arcs that doesn't try to sell a message or anything like that, but just entertains, that is true to Star Wars, a space fantasy adventure. That's all I want. That's it. So hopefully they can do that. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard, and yet here we are. All right, so the next story that I wanted to cover, every upcoming Star Wars video game in 2026 and beyond. Now, we've talked about some of these recently in the past, but there's a couple here I've never talked about on camera, I don't think. I'm actually going to be up that way in the end of April. I'm going to be in New York. So we might have to try to figure out a way of having a cup of coffee or something. All right. Dating back to the earliest days of the franchise, Star Wars has been much more than just a series of beloved sci-fi movies. The video games, dating back to The Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600, have been staples when it comes to expanding the lore and offering fans more ways to interact with a galaxy far, far away. Disney and Lucasfilm have not forgotten that. Ever since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012, video games have been a big part of the equation. The open-world Star Wars Outlaws arrived in 2024. The Battlefront series was revived 7 years back. It's been a mixed bag, but there's always going to be the case when so many projects made by various companies are being put into the marketplace. In the coming years, though, there's going to be plenty for fans to enjoy on this front, with more than a half dozen Star Wars video games arriving in 2026 and beyond. And those are just the ones we know about. We're going to offer a brief rundown of all the titles Lucasfilm Games has announced, while offering a primer on what to expect from them. This doesn't include games like Battlefront 3 that could happen but haven't been officially announced. Rather, we're going with games that have officially been revealed by Lucasfilm but have yet to actually be released. So let's get into it. I have a storied history with Star Wars games. I loved a handful of them, but there's some versions of them that I'm just not really into. And so it's very strange to be a massive fan and a former regular Star Wars gamer, and then to sort of see these new projects come out and be like, oh, that looks amazing, but I would never play it. It's just a strange, experience to, at least from my perspective, to have. So Star Wars Zero Company. This is one of those where I think it's very cool, but I'll never play it. Many Star Wars games have been discussed in recent years, but for the many that have been delayed or canceled, Star Wars Zero Company is actually happening, and soon. First announced in April 2025 at Star Wars Celebration Japan, it hails from developer Bit Reactor along with Respawn Entertainment and Lucasfilm Games. One would be forgiven for missing this one in the shuffle, as Star Wars Starfighter is officially announced around that time, among other things. The game is due to arrive sometime in 2026, and it's described as a single-player, turn-based tactics game. Think XCOM or Marvel's Midnight Suns. As for the story at hand, players will step into the shoes of Hawks, a former Republic officer, who commanding an elite squad of operatives. The story is set in the twilight of the Clone Wars, so the so-called Zero Company, wow, that's annoying, must set aside their differences to overcome nearly impossible odds and take on an emerging threat that will consume the galaxy if left unchecked. While the Clone Wars era does offer opportunities to cross over with familiar characters, it does appear that this game is more focused on telling a story with new characters and settings, even if it's a familiar era. Star Wars Zero Company arrives in 2026 for PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. So that's interesting. All right, Zero Company is what you'd call your bedroom until you turn through. All right, so the next one is Star Wars Galactic Racer. A great many Star Wars video games tend to focus on stories within a galaxy far, far away, both familiar and new. A great many others, such as the much-beloved Star Wars Battlefront series, are more combat-based. Then there's Episode 1 Racer, a Nintendo 64 gem that was all about pod racing, offering a very unique experience. Looking like a spiritual successor to that game for current-gen gamers, Star Wars Galactic Racer seeks to scratch a very particular itch. This one, I do think I'll be playing. Hailing from Fuse Games, this is a runs-based, high-stakes reinvention of racing born in the lawless Outer Rim. Taking place in the time between the original and sequel trilogies, the Empire is gone and the galaxy is rebuilding. The Galactic League is created, offering up a underground, unsanctioned circuit where syndicates bankroll the chaos. Fans won't have to wait too long, as this one is also slated to arrive in 2026. Quote, few have been industry leaders in some of the most beloved racing franchises in Need for Speed and Burnout, Lucas Games general manager Douglas Riley said to StarWars.com after the announcement. I can't think of any other studio better suited to bring Star Wars racing back to our fans. Star Wars Galactic Racer arrives in 2026 for PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic. Lots of folks consider Knights of the Old Republic to be the greatest Star Wars game ever made. There's a good reason for that. While we've been waiting on a remake of that original early 2000s classic for several years now, more on that in a bit, Lucasfilm Games did fans a solid recently by revealing a brand new game that will take us back to that same era thousands of years ago in the timeline. Enter Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, directed by Casey Hudson, who directed the original KOTOR. While much still remains mysterious, an initial teaser trailer showcased some impressive evocative imagery. The title also lets us know that this will be likely to take place during the end of the Old Republic era, which again is thousands of years before the events of the movies. Argonaut Studios has partnered with Lucasfilm on the title. Plot details largely remain under wraps, but it's described as a narrative single-player action role-playing game. An official description states blending innovative storytelling, memorable characters, and heart-pounding combat. Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic will immerse you in an unforgettable experience with every decision deepens your journey toward the light, or the darkness. While no release date has been announced, Hudson took to Twitter to say, "Don't worry about the not till 2030 rumors. Game will be out before then. I'm not getting any younger." We'll see about that. Star Wars Jedi 3. In the Disney era of Lucasfilm, which dates back to 2012, few things in a galaxy far, far away have been so roundly beloved as the Star Wars Jedi games. Centered on a former Jedi Padawan named Cal Kestis who survived Order 66, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Star Wars Jedi Survivor both told all-time great stories within this universe. Details remain scarce, but Respawn Entertainment and Lucasfilm Games are indeed working on a third installment in the series. We're in the process of doing it right now, actor Cameron Monaghan, who plays Cal, said at Ocala Comic-Con in 2023. That's a big undertaking, and there have been some conversations so far. Hopefully, when all things are said and done, we'll be able to go in and make something really cool for you guys again. The story details haven't been revealed, but there's still plenty of time between the events of Survivor and the original Star Wars trilogy on the timeline. Director Stig Asmussen, who has since left Respawn, said to IGN in 2023 that this series has always been envisioned as a trilogy. "I always wanted to see this as a trilogy," he said at the time. "How can we take Cal and the crew to new places beyond what we're doing on the first game?" Star Wars Jedi 3 doesn't currently have a release date, but stay tuned. This is one I will absolutely be playing when it comes out. I still have yet to play number 2, but it's in the mail. I will get to it. I do own it. I just haven't played it. Star Wars Eclipse. Way back in late 2021, a full 4 years ago as of this writing, Lucasfilm Games and Quantum Dream dropped a total surprise on everyone during the Game Awards when they unveiled the jaw-dropping trailer of Star Wars Eclipse. Loaded with intriguing, incredible cinematic imagery, this game is set during the High Republic era, several hundred years before the events of the prequels. Outside of the novels and The Acolyte, that's a very unexplored era in the timeline, making the game seem like an appealing prospect. Unfortunately, in the years since its announcement, this one has been plagued with delays. What we know for sure is that it's described as intricately branching action-adventure game that can be experienced in many ways and puts the destinies of multiple player characters in your hands. It's very much about telling a story more than it is about combat or anything like that. The game lets you play as a diverse cast of charismatic characters, each with their own story, abilities, and role to play in the tapestry of events that could alter the carefully balanced peace of the Outer Rim. There's still no word on the release date, but Quantum has provided very minor updates here and there. Rumors have suggested a possible 2027 release date at the earliest, but it could be as late as 2030 if certain rumors are to be believed. Either way, don't hold your breath. This is one that was exciting when it was announced, but just fell into development hell, and I can't see it ever progressing. Speaking of that, the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. Circling back to Knights of the Old Republic for a certain group of Star Wars fans, there was a collective flip out when it was revealed that an official remake of the classic game was in the works for the PlayStation 5 back in 2021, with a very brief teaser trailer. With Asper Media working on the new version of the game, the excitement was palpable. Sadly, updates have been few and far between ever since. The teaser that was revealed at the time was truly just a teaser, with a cloaked lightsaber-wielding figure emerging from the shadows. That's about it. The teaser basically existed to let people know that remake was happening. In more than 4 years since, we've had no more trailers, no official promo material, nothing. What we know for sure is that Lucasfilm wants to explore this era of Star Wars with several filmmakers pitching stories in the Old Republic. Nothing of substance has emerged during Disney's reign. Parts of the problem might be that Disney's extremely controlling of the canon in the Star Wars galaxy. Really? Really? Because what we've seen thus far is them breaking their own canon on a regular basis. If they release a straight-up remake with modern graphics, would it be considered canon? Would that change anything Lucasfilm wants to do elsewhere? This is all speculative, but it's quite possible that Fate of the Old Republic ends up taking this remake's place ultimately. Time will tell, but for now, this one feels like it's stuck in limbo. The Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake doesn't currently have a release date. Yeah, it's been rumored that they actually canceled the remake that I heard. Amy Hennig and Skydance's Mystery Star Wars game. Back in 2022, Skydance formed Skydance New Media and tapped Amy Hennig, Jack and Daxter, Uncharted, to head up the division. As part of that, Skydance formed a partnership with Lucasfilm Games, with Hennig set to develop a new Star Wars video game. Very little was revealed at the time, and more than 3 years later, details still remain entirely scarce. At the time, it's said that the game would be a narrative-driven action-adventure game featuring an original story in the Star Wars galaxy. That's still about all that has officially been revealed. In 2023, Dominic Robillard, director of the infamously canceled game Star Wars 1313, was tapped to work alongside Hennig on the game. I'm incredibly excited to share that I will be joining Amy Hennig, Julian Brake, and the incredible team at Skydance New Media as their game director, he said on LinkedIn at the time. To collaborate with such an amazing group of developers and to play in the iconic worlds of Marvel and Star Wars again is a dream come true. I cannot wait to get started. The as of yet untitled Star Wars game from Sundance remains without a release date, but stay tuned. Yeah, this is probably another one of those that just hit development hell and never went anywhere. And that's kind of it for upcoming Star Wars games that have been announced or at some point have been leaked that would be happening. So is there one that you're looking forward to more than others? For me, it's probably the Racer and Star Wars Jedi 3. Those are the ones. The Knights of the Old Republic one, Fate of the Old Republic, looks awesome, and I would love it to come out, but they were still in development when it was announced. So that could very easily fall into the same development hell as other Star Wars titles listed later on in this article. So I don't have any hope that it's going to come out anytime soon until we actually see a trailer, not a cinematic suggestion or teaser, but an actual game trailer. Until then, it's all rumor. Who knows? So let me know in the comments what you think. What Star Wars gaming product announcement was the most disappointing to you over the years? For you, it's a tie between KOTOR 3 and a bounty hunter game that EA got very far into development about 10 years ago. That was the 1313 game. And that one was what I was really excited for until it just died. So that's the one I would say for me. The entire pod racing concept and execution was one of Lucas's best ideas in the entire prequel trilogy. You loved it. Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing that game, like a lot. And then I would get on and I would, sort of race against my wife on her computer and me on my computer. And then friends at the time. I was stationed in Mannheim, Germany at the time in the U.S. Army. And we would just get online and play games. It was awesome. Great time. All right, last but not least, let's take a look at the Star Wars news desk. Of course, there is not a lot that we haven't already covered. So I actually noticed this one. Star Wars The Force Awakens from concept to screen. And this is kind of fun because it takes screenshots of the film and then framed concept art And you can sort of like see how the concept art led to the actual on-screen view. And as an artist, as someone who appreciates the art, and all of you, of course, I thought this would be kind of fun to explore. So let's do so. So, Star Wars The Force Awakens, from concept to screen. To mark 10 years since the release of the first sequel trilogy film, go back to the literal drawing board to uncover how concept art helped define a new era of Star Wars storytelling. As we mark the 10th anniversary of Star Wars The Force Awakens, which premiered in theaters December 18th, 2015, this is an old article, StarWars.com looks back at the film that launched the sequel trilogy. On December 12, 2012, production designers Rick Carter and Doug Chiang, along with David Nakabayashi, creative director of the Industrial Light and Magic art department, gathered at Lucasfilm headquarters in San Francisco to handpick a dream team of concept designers for the first film in the nascent Star Wars sequel trilogy, later titled Star Wars The Force Awakens. That team, nicknamed Visualists by Carter, included concept supervisors Ryan Church and Eric Tiemens, who, along with Chiang, were directly mentored by Star Wars creator George Lucas during their time leading to the Jack Films art department for the Star Wars prequel trilogy. It also included ILM concept supervisor Christian Alsman, the four of whom would go on to form the core design team of Chiang's Lucasfilm art department for projects ranging from Rogue One: A Star Wars Story to the 2026 theatrical release The Mandalorian and Grogu, as well as future Star Wars production designers James Klein and Kevin Jenkins, to name but a few. This year, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the release of both The Force Awakens on film and The Art of The Force Awakens, my first book in the long-running Art of Star Wars series on bookshelves. The latter charts the full visual development of the film from concept to screen, from art within the art department, and the selections below demonstrate how vital that work was in bringing co-writer and director J.J. Abrams' vision for the first chapter in a new era of Star Wars storytelling to life. So let's just take a look at some of these really quick. The Graveyard of Giants scene in the film was first realized in concept art by Eric Tiemens. So this is the concept art, and this is the actual film. I mean, pretty damn cool seeing it from concept to creation. The look of the TIE fighters against twin suns was recreated almost exactly on screen, with a key revision reflecting Jakku's singular star, concept art by Doug Chiang. So this is the concept art. Awesome. Of course, this is taken from, what's that Vietnam film? Apocalypse Now. And then the actual film version. I mean, it looks dope. They did great. The planet-annihilating power of Starkiller Base was first envisioned in concept art by Andre Wallen and Doug Chiang. Look, say what you want about Starkiller Base. The novelization made it so much cooler and logical. It still looks awesome on screen, though. Like, the concept design right here is great. And then that's just badass. Lucasfilm's Doug Chiang illustrated the heart-pounding dogfight between the group of TIE fighters and the Millennium Falcon invading the First Order on Jakku. So this is the concept art. Pew pew. And such a great scene. Such a great sequence in the film as well. I mean, that was all the trailers were showing, was the Millennium Falcon doing loop-de-loops and flying around through wreckage. And it's such a great series of imagery. If you could go back in time and pick a different director for The Force Awakens, who would you pick? You would have picked Favreau, working closely with Lucas. Dude, if Favreau could work with Lucas, I really think it would be amazing results. Because Favreau is a genuinely awesome filmmaker. And George Lucas is the visionary. You put those two together, I think you cover all of the bases that George Lucas is terrible at, and you get all of the imagination of George Lucas and the wonderful talent of Favreau. I think you have a really great idea there. So the next one is Poe Dameron, Oscar Isaac, and Finn John Boyega making a daring escape in concept art and on film, concept art by James Klein. So this is the concept art, and this is the actual film. I love concept art. I love the artwork of Star Wars. It's so goddamn good. For a story set so many years after the fall of the Empire, Lucasfilm Doug Chiang illustrated the massive machines of war like the Star Destroyer left to rot in the Jakku sun. And again, stuff like this, where it's like an era almost becoming archaic, you know? Like the sands are swallowing the galactic civil war or later. So cool. The concept piece Killer Jedi, or Jedi Killer in Snow by Lucasfilm's Doug Chiang, graced the cover of the art of Star Wars The Force Awakens and informed the look of Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, during his fateful encounter with Rey, Daisy Ridley, and Finn, John Boyega on Starkiller Base. It's great imagery. Looking at the rain, like, shaking off and the trees and stuff. So cool. Unkar Plutt's Nema Outpost began as a piece of art envisioning Rey visiting Plutt's trading stand. Concept art by Eric Tiemens. So this is concept art. Looks great. And the film, not as good. I actually think this is better, but still good. All right, artist Ryan Church explored the design of the First Order TIE pilots. Concept art by Ryan Church. Really good. Looks great. The Fallen AT-AT Walker, where Rey makes her home, was first illustrated as concept art by Andre Wallen and Doug Chiang. Yeah, looks so good. Burned out wreckage of a Special Forces TIE fighter puts Finn, John Boyega on the path to meeting Rey, Daisy Ridley. Concept art by Andre Wallen. That looks great. All right, I'm just going to go through some of these rather than reading all the captions. Oh, Snoke. Yeah. I kind of like him better this way than with the robe. Gosh, the promise of Snoke was so great. It's so unfortunate what they ended up doing. I love the epic scale of this. And this is just like... Wait a second, is this ice? Did they just take a screenshot of Michigan? Is it Michigan or is it Missouri or Minnesota or whatever? I don't even know. And Rey. Looking like a frog. Ribbit. All right, and that's it. Do you guys have a favorite piece of art from any art of Star Wars that you've ever seen? Do you have a favorite piece? Let me know in the comments. Did you enjoy The Force Awakens? I enjoyed it when I first saw it. It was a wonderful promise, a wonderful setup that just never stuck the landing. All right, thank you guys so much. That is going to do it for today's HoloNet news. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe so you can catch the next episode where we'll explore more Star Wars news. You can also support this YouTube channel by becoming a member on the YouTube channel or a patron on Patreon. Links in the description below. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy, producer patron Azrael, and developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz. Thank you for watching, and until next time, my fellow scruffy looking Nerf Herders, may the Force be with you.